All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Gary, for the kind introduction. First of all, on behalf of all of the organizations that have sponsored this great event, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being attendees. And thank you to Matt Grimm for playing this morning. Especially when he came in from Madison on, I don't know, about 24 hours notice, something like that. So 48. So Ken gave him a little bit more time than I was giving him credit for. But also thank you to all the sponsors, and I'm not going to go ahead and list them because I cannot do that from memory and most likely would leave some out. But if you look at your program, you most definitely would be able to see all of them and everyone who helped make this possible. And finally, before anyone forgets to do this, we need to thank Lance Coles, the communications director for the Iowa Federation of Labor. Without Lance, he's really the glue that has kept everyone together and been the driving force in a very, very difficult season since the beginning of the year for just about every single group that's involved in this entire endeavor. So I just want to say really quickly a little bit about when we last had this in 2015 versus 2017. So in 2015, we had some more big name speakers in. We talked a lot about issues, and I think that was really important. A lot of what we were trying to do was to set up issues for the Iowa caucuses. And Robert Reich was here, and there was probably a little bit larger crowd. And we were in really different political times back then, obviously. Because now in 2017, we find ourselves not trying to just set the agenda and set our issues forward, but it's time to do a lot of skill building and organizing. And you may not know it, but everyone in this room is an organizer. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to four remarkable people who all in some way or another have gone outside of the box, gone outside of their comfort zones maybe, and took it upon themselves this year to say, no, I've had enough. I'm going to make a difference. So I'm going to start with Megan Flynn, originally from Minnesota and a Wellstone Democrat. That's worthy of applause. Megan Flynn Bickle now considers herself an Iowan after 12 years of residence. You don't need to wait 12 years to be considered an Iowan. We'll take anybody. But after witnessing sexual assault and harassment to close family members, hitting the glass ceiling in her career, and to cope with the results of the presidential election, Megan threw herself into planning the Women's March in Des Moines in January of 2017. She is a wife, a mother of 3 labs, a master gardener, a decent Spanish speaker, and makes her life living as an attorney in Des Moines. And this is somebody who helped put together a 26,000-person march in Iowa. The next person that is here to speak about how he's been going about dealing with new laws that have been passed, very unfair and unjust collective bargaining laws, is Shane Peterson. Shane is a member of the Iowa State Education Association and is in his 3rd year as president of West Lyon Education Association, and currently serves as the Northern Pride Executive Board as a Protecting Member Rights Committee member and the ISCA Executive Board. Peterson is a 4th-year industrial technology teacher at West Lyon Community School District. And if you just put his name into YouTube, he's got all kinds of cool videos about the stuff that he does with his students. Really, really interesting and cool stuff. But what Shane did is he's been bargaining, but he's been working with his community before and after this, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that. Mazahir Salih. She is an organizer for the Center for Worker Justice of Eastern Iowa, CWJ, and has been active in CWJ since its founding. It's all right to applaud CWJ. Playing leadership roles in CWJ campaigns on immigration reform, increasing the minimum wage, addressing police violence and racial profiling, and affordable housing. She is originally from the Sudan and now lives in Iowa City, where in 2013 she has served on the Iowa City Police Citizens Review Board. She is a mother of 5, holds a degree in civil engineering from Sudan University of Science and Technology, and is a 2016 graduate of Kirkwood College. Our last panelist here is Dale Todd, and he is a developer of affordable housing in Cedar Rapids with the Hatch Development Group. He's a former member of the Cedar Rapids City Council, and his life changed almost 15 years ago when his son Adam had his first epileptic seizure at 3.5 years old. Today, Dale and his wife Sarah provide inspiration and support to parents across the country through numerous local and national epilepsy-related organizations, and work tirelessly as advocates for people with disabilities and special needs. But with that, so I'm just going to throw this question open to all 4 of you, and we're going to have a bit of a discussion here, and then we'll take some questions from the audience, and then we'll go to lunch. But first one is really simple here, and this is for all of you, whoever wants to go first, but what made you feel as though you needed to take action, and then what did you do? Who wants to go first? Okay, Megan.
Well, thank you for having me. And, you know, in my introduction, I kind of alluded to why I jumped into helping with the Women's March. You know, it was almost like a perfect storm in my own life, dealing with a sister who had been raped through the coals with the system, and a cousin who had been sexually harassed at her employment, also raked through the coals, and in part of her settlement deal, had to quit her job as a public defender. So, that is and then also as a female in the financial services industry, just feeling that glass ceiling, and if any woman who doesn't believe there is one, there is one, not being able to play in the boys' sandbox, really. So it was just kind of this culmination of that, and obviously, listening to number 45 speak about how women, how he treated women. And so the culmination of all of that, it was pure anger, and also pure being absolutely terrified for our country. And so I didn't know what else to do. I had been a part of Pantsuit Nation, which was a Facebook group later on, because I was originally a Bernie supporter, but then became a member of this Pantsuit Nation, and it all started there, that these women had talked about doing a women's march in DC, and then I just threw myself into helping do the Iowa march. So it was really for me to keep my focus on, well, not only my values, but also to keep my sanity throughout the November, December, and January. So that was my, and I'm a firm believer in the Women's March actually wasn't just about for women either, I mean, it was a broader perspective as well of all of the topics that we're talking about, the most underserved, the most marginalized of our society. So, I mean, and that's something I've always believed in and have a very strong opinion about. So that's how I got involved in the Women's March.
Great. Maza here. I know you have a few slides that you'd like to show, but just tell me when you want me to move on. And please lean into the mic just a little bit so everyone's able to hear y'all.
Okay. Not. That's okay now? Okay. You know, a lot of things made us to do something and take actions, you know, at the federal level and even at the state level. You know, at the state level, I'm going to give you just a little bit about how we increase the minimum wage at the county level. After we we fought a lot to do it at the state level, and since we cannot do it, in 2015, Johnson County passed the minimum wage increase and like 3-step 95 cents each, and it became 10.10 in January 2017. And we thought this is really huge that we made this, even though 10.10 is not enough, but at least it's a step moving forward. And on January 2017, you know, it became 10.10, but on March 2017, everybody know what happened. The legislation in Des Moines, they reduced the minimum wage to $7.35. And we believe that is not enough because this is not something, the 10.10 is not something that we done overnight. We really done a lot of work. We involve all the community like on doing this. That's why when they reduce it, we just said, no, we cannot just like keep silent, we have to do something. And we come together as a community and we start doing it, like start talking about it, what we can do. We just said we have to raise our local standard. Since like Des Moines people are not our residents, Johnson County residents, they are not the customer or the employees of Johnson County. That's why we start thinking what we can do. And we said, okay, our Johnson County people is better than that. And we start like reaching out to business and we create this flyer, which is say like keep supporting 1010 and keep moving this community forward together. And we start reaching out to businesses, CWJ members and allies of the communities, and like face group and everybody, they start like reaching out to businesses and we ask them to keep paying 1010 regardless of what's happening in Des Moines, because you know it's already in place. That means nobody like went out of business after it. Everybody is still functioning. That means everybody is still making profit. Thank you. That's why we should continue doing it. And you know, it was really good. Like so, you can move to that slide. And you know, like more than 100 business in Johnson County signed to keep the minimum wage for their current and future employee, which is huge. And not only the people who like just the people who sign, but we did not just reach out to all of them. We are working on it. And I guess by hopefully, like we will reach out to all of them and everybody will agree to do so. And also this is just at the state level. And if we just start talking about what having make us like also feel strong, we need to take action by the executive order that the president passed. And one of them is respond to hate crime like on high schools, West High School in Johnson County. The students they just like start like receiving discriminatory comment about like some like go home and something like that. And the students started organizing together with the help of the Center for Worker Justice, and we did really and they create like group called Student Against Hate, and we work with them, and we had like really big rally where 700 people march in response to what happened at the schools. And it's been like New York Times also interviewed them, and it was really huge and something make the student feel good. The community is still with them, and they are not going to accept something like this. And also we respond to the Muslim ban, and also the building the wall. We had like really big rally where like more than 2,000 people come together, and they just start like marching and protesting, and they don't want to do that. And also like there is many things that we can do at the local level to to keep the community together. One of them is just like we do like education session for the Latinos, about what they can do. And also we're reaching out to the sheriff and to the police chief, so we can just make sure that they are not going to like honoring the ICE request. And we educate all the Latinos, and we have like community potluck where everybody come together every 2 months and start like eating together, and everybody will start new the immigrants and the community, so we can feel like one unity. That's what kind of thing that we do. Yeah.
Excellent work that CWJ is doing. Shane, tell us about how I think a lot of different public sector unions and locals are trying to figure out how to deal with this new collective bargaining law, if you want to call it a collective bargaining law anymore. Shane, how is West Line Education Association, how are you dealing with this and working with this? No.
That one's on now. Okay. It kind of went back to the first year, after my first year of teaching at Westline. We had our local association that we really weren't doing a lot. We'd meet once a year, a couple times a year, and it was basically talked about, you know, what was our bargaining going to be for that year for the wages, and that was about it. And then nobody really wanted to pursue being the president, and as going to be a second-year teacher, I said, what the heck, I'm going to go for it, and stepped into that role and met with a few other first and second-year teachers that also wanted to become active in the group, and we kind of laid out a plan because we wanted to develop a relationship with our administration, because our feeling was, why fight with them if you don't have to? We really want to have that good relationship with our administration. It makes working there better. It makes talking to them better. And so we wanted to build that relationship. We wanted to become involved in the community. Whether you like it or not as a teacher, there are sometimes people that think teachers come at 8 o'clock, they go home at 3:30, and then they take 3 months off in the summer. And that's really not what we did. And so we wanted to become involved with the community so they knew what we did as well. And after we started doing these kind of things and getting involved and going to different ISEA events, we kind of figured out as a group of young teachers that the collective bargaining thing was closer than we really thought or that we knew about. And all it was going to take was a couple of different people in different places, and that was probably going to become reality. So we took action and preparing ourselves and kind of becoming educated about it. And then when it did happen, we were, I don't want to say ready, because I don't think anybody was really ready to deal with it, but we were prepared the best we could be. We had maintained that really good working relationship with our superintendent and business manager, who are the people that we bargained with. One thing that our school, it makes our school very special, is our school provides full family insurance for all the teachers. And so we wanted to make sure that we protected that. And that's one thing we worked really hard to make sure that we protected. And we did. And we worked with the superintendent and business manager this year. We usually started bargaining in February, and we're done within a week or two. This year we started in February and went till, I believe, the end of April, going back and forth between different meetings and contacting our UNISERV directors and just keeping educated about it. And meanwhile, while doing all of that, we kept up with our community activities. So we do a community dinner theater every year. We did that again. We got swimming pool passes for kids in one of the towns around us. We did our food drive again. So while communicating and bargaining, we kept doing things in the community. And then we also had a few teachers, or a group of teachers that were not members, and nobody had really approached them. And so I said, my personal goal is to communicate with those people and pick up a few of those as members, and went at the beginning of the year and talked to them, and I basically just sat down and I said, I don't care if you're going to join or not. I just would like to know why you haven't joined, or what has set you off in the past, or turned you away from this, because I want to change that. And just asking them and approaching them, we had 8 of those people join the next week. So just keeping that open mind and listening to everybody was a huge benefit to the situation. Is just having that didn't matter who it was or what they thought, is just listening to them and taking into account how they felt and what they believed, and then working together as a group on it. And we all agreed that we wanted to continue to provide for the students and the teachers at our school, so that we all had that common goal.
Great, thank you, Shane. So Dale, obviously, you're not new to activism, and had been a public office holder before. But what in particular made you feel as though you really needed to take on Congressman Bloom in public, and then how did you approach it? What are your thoughts on your interaction with him?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm lucky to the extent that I grew up with parents who were activists, and we grew up during the Vietnam War, and we marched during the civil rights struggle, and like many of you, I woke up the day after the election depressed, and it's quite obvious that today our country is in the midst of a political crisis. I began to really get frustrated when I saw what Chuck Grassley did to Barack Obama when they held up his Supreme Court pick for a year. And I began to write letters almost every other week. And it's no secret, in the Iowa legislature, the Republican Party showed their playbook. And it's an incredibly mean, insensitive playbook, and they were able to implement it. And when they did, you saw that it was based in fear and racism and negativity. And it was no secret that and I like to think I'm usually politically active, but I had never met Rod Bloom. I had never met this guy. And my wife was out of town, and I told myself that we're going to go. And we didn't have a sitter, so Adam came with me. And I just have tried to, that initial health care bill got held up because the Freedom Caucus didn't think that was mean enough or bad enough. And he is part of that Freedom Caucus. And I was gracious, but as you mentioned earlier, he lied. And so we got him on record. This is the time to get engaged. It's these guys have, and I've been engaged, and I've done the stuff behind the scenes, and I had been reluctant to get out and march and publicly cross that line. That's a line that you all have to independently decide. But for those of us that went through Watergate, this is worse than Watergate in my eyes. And the racism and the bigotry and the sexism that people are proud to espouse now is a dangerous trait that needs to be checked. And so historically, guys like Jim Leach, who, while we may differ politically, there were always moderates that would check that wild card in the party. And what happened with us to a degree, when our party didn't have a message and the moderate Republicans were not there, then we leave the door wide open for kooks and wackos and people that are incapable of making public policy decisions in the country's best interest. And so that's where I feel we were at, and it's real obvious and apparent to a lot of people that that is the trajectory of this administration. So it's time to get engaged.
So Dale, you talked a little bit about how you were stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I want to ask all of you, you know, in the things that you did at whatever point you started, was this in your comfort zone, and or was this a completely new experience for you?
For me, of course, it was in our comfort room because all the community was like involving in each step of raising the minimum wage. And everybody was believing that, yeah, $7.25 is not enough. That's why when we passed it, it was easy for the community to be together. And also when we start responding to the action that has been done by Des Moines, by reaching out to businesses, everybody start like coming together, and we like helping all the communities and members of the center, they start reaching out to the businesses with us. And I guess I can say it was in our comfort zone.
For me, part of it was within my comfort zone. I'm very goal oriented. I'm a good planner. I can figure things out pretty well. But with that, I'm also an introvert, and dealing with, I mean, hundreds of people, lots of opinions, lots of comments, negativity. You know, that was a struggle for me, dealing with so much, you know, negativity. And I joke about, you know, I learned there are kooky people in our own party too, you know. I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, we're not all like, you know, moderate and, you know, level-headed folks. There's ego, a lot of ego too, and that was something I learned. But, you know, for me, it was more of just putting, you know, one foot in front of the other. You know, it was, and I'm just figure it out, you know, and just today's today, and we're gonna just figure out how to, you know, do something, arrange buses to get to DC, and, you know, we just do it, you know, and I think that's, like, for me, the message is just do it, you know, and there's no wrong, just ask questions and figure it out, you know. No one's going to, I've learned, like, no one's going to solve my problems. I gotta do the work on my, you know, with myself, and build, you know, coalitions with other people. So, so yes, part of it was out of my comfort zone, and part of it wasn't. So,
the part for me that was out of my comfort zone is I'm originally from Nebraska, grew up and went to college there, and took a job in Iowa, didn't know a single person where I was moving, didn't know about the school, I didn't know anything. So I just decided I was gonna try something completely new. And then, like I said, after 1 year of teaching, I said, this has went well so far, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and be the president of our association. So
Sometimes
Yeah.
that's how it works.
And just, you know, I deal with this a lot with parents of kids with epilepsy. And it's a personal decision that they have to make internally about how much they're going to get engaged. But in all honesty, for me, it was 8 years of getting kicked in the teeth for Barack Obama and us as Democrats running away from the things that he was trying to do. So in a sense, we created this monster that we have today. And it was just a matter of saying, no one's going to do it other than us. And it doesn't take a lot of people in Iowa to get a lot of things done, or to put fear in the hearts of legislators. But we had been missing from that discussion over time. And so it's to today and the marches, in a sense, it's been a form of therapy, I think, for all of us. But it's a scary, scary time out there. And we need new faces, and we need young faces and different faces. And for me, it was personal. Healthcare is personal. And when you talk about my kids' health care or my family's health care, we're talking about, you know, some of those basic struggles that as a country we've had, whether it was civil rights or sexual rights or women's rights. This is a real deal. And people are going to be impacted. In Iowa, it's going to be 72,000 people that aren't going to have insurance here soon. And from an economic perspective, it's going to impact us in a huge way. And so it's time to get in the game.
So it was mentioned a little bit about getting the community involved. So I suspect you all did this in different ways. How did you get community or allies involved? You know, I suspect some of it's on social media, some of it's in person, some of it's just personal relationships. But how did, you know, none of the groups that are sponsors of this or not sponsors of this are big enough to get the things done alone, right? So how did you get the community involved and allies and how did that happen?
I guess I'll speak on that. I spent the entire Christmas week sending emails to any group that I thought could possibly be interested. And one of the coalitions that we built was like, okay, let's have our planning meetings. You know, would Planned Parenthood allow us to have our planning meetings in their space? You know, so that obviously they were struggling at that time as well. And so it was like, where can we build bridges? You know, where can we find where are our allies? And it was, you know, some of it was social media, posting things on Facebook was huge. We had a website to get people involved. We also, you know, the committee that worked on this also had their own background and their own relationships with the individuals we had speak. I mean, for me, I hadn't really been politically involved. I mean, I was kind of riding, you know, hanging out, expecting a completely different result. And so I wasn't really plugged in that way. So other people, you know, had been, and so they brought in other people to get on board. But, you know, I mean, I didn't do it alone at all. I mean, it was just this momentum. I think we all felt a lot similar. You know, we all got into the march for different reasons, but, you know, but it was for the same, you know, the same cause. So, and I had tapped in, I worked with the Latino community. I joke about Spanish, but I speak Spanish, and so, you know, I tapped into the Latino community as well, that I had worked with in the past. So, you know, for me, it's more of like, and just like, you know, Shane talked about, just like having conversations and, you know, being respectful to other people, you know, and listening, you know, to others and their cause. That's what, to me, that's what brings people on board. It's not about the face of the movement. It was just like about doing what's right, you know. That's what's completely lacking to me in our society right now. So I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Like our member, you know, already contacted us as soon as they start hearing that the minimum wage will be reduced and start like fearing and freaking out and asking, is they gonna reduce my 1010 already that I already have? And, you know, this way we start organizing the members in the community. And also the allies, you know, we do that. We have bi-monthly allies meeting where they come and we just update them about what we're working and they will be involved. Also, we use social media and like Facebook, and we send also emails to them. So it was really, everybody was then start like also when we start reaching out and giving us the poster where everybody posted on their, you know, their window, like the business window. The community started noticing that, and whenever they go somewhere, they will start asking the people, the owner of the business, do you pay attention? Are you going to continue doing that? And they start like helping us doing that, yeah.
So have you had a lot of, we support Johnson County minimum wage, even though it's been rolled back. How many businesses have agreed to, put those in their windows or doors?
So far, like over 100, they sign up and they agree to do. But, few of them, maybe less than 5, I guess, they just have some kind of, they say, yeah, we agree and we're paying that and we will take it. But some don't say they don't want to put this on the window so people think that we are hiring or something like that, or some kind of excuse, even though I don't agree with it. But, at least, I happy that they are supporting it and they are doing it, even if they don't put it on the windows, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lame excuse, but hopefully they're still paying 10-10. Shane?
Yeah.
One of the ways that we got with the community involved was we couldn't have done it without the ISEA. They got a program where locals could get $500 grants to do community work, and it was just that was the first step, and then having our WLEA members that said we're going to write 5 of them, and we're going to do 5 different ones for our community, and then continue to do those every time they were available. So without those grants being available and then the members pursuing those, we wouldn't have been able to build that kind of community support.
I'm just going to follow up on something that Megan said. She said just do it. And as Democrats, my experience is that sometimes we can study something to depth. We can plan to depth. There is, the beauty of what's happening right now is that there is an organic movement that is happening out there, and people are hungry for this community, for the discussion, and what we need to do is let loose some of our constraints and help facilitate this. Maybe if it even involves backing off, and like Shane said, $500 can make or break an event, But people want to get together. They want to talk about this. I mean, they want to. Hopefully, we've went through the grieving process, in January and February and March, and almost every day still. But you get up in the morning and you yell at your TV for 10 minutes, but then it's time to get out and do something. And so, what the beauty of the Megans and these new faces is that this is what we've needed for a long time. For the last 15, 20 years, we haven't had this blood. And I mean, I don't know if the last time some of you have been to a Democratic Party meeting, those are painful. They're painful. And these new people who are, they're millennials, and they get there and they're, you can see you've lost them in the first half hour. But you can get them in the door. How do we retain those people? We have to change our paradigm so that we can attract and keep these people. And so that's why the Megans of the world and the Shanes are critical to this new movement.
So absolutely. So, we have 3, within the past, several years or months or weeks, new activists on the scene like Dale was talking about. So one of the questions I was interested in asking you all is what is the thing that you didn't know at the time? One of the things that our president, or my boss, Ken, says often is, sometimes it's great because younger people or newer people on the scene, they don't know that you're not supposed to do something, right? So, and that can be good or bad, right? But what was the thing that you didn't know at the time when you started all this that you really wish that you did? Is there something you would have done differently, or is, like I said, is there something that you didn't know at the time that you wish you did?
What time? In general?
Well,
Things? General?
I guess pick a point. When CWJ, for example, first started organizing around the minimum wage or community ID or things like that, or whether it was your current campaign to maintain wages in Johnson County. Pick a point.
So thank you for thinking I might be a millennial. I'm closing in on 40 on Tuesday, so thank you, appreciate it. I think for me, it was a couple of things, and I alluded to it, dealing with, people with interesting motives, I guess, dealing with people who are ego-driven. I think that kind of surprised me a little bit, and kind of saddened me, about, and that stems across, all political parties or whatever. So I was kind of surprised about that motives. When I reserved the Capitol building, I thought we were going to be able to do it. This switched until like the very last minute, but I thought we'd be able to crowd inside the Capitol. It was January, so the first when I made the reservation, I thought there would be 750 people. I was like, I'm not going to tell. Maybe we'll have 1,000 people. And so when there were 26,000 people, that was kind of a surprise for us. But, that wasn't, that was not my doing as I helped facilitate it, but like that just shows you, that it's not just, just me. A lot of us feel the same way, and just again, just going out and doing it. I think also there are doers, and then there are people who say they're going to do, or there are the talkers. And I've learned that you got to find the doers, the people who are willing to step up to the plate. We can talk about how shitty the political environment is right now, but if you're not going to do anything about it, so what? So you got to find your team, your players, the people that are, have some action behind their rhetoric. And so, you build your team that way. That's just some of the things I learned. If anybody needs some reserve the Capitol, I know how to do that. There's so many things skill sets I've learned how to do for this, so thanks.
I really don't know exactly how I should answer that question, because I really don't have anything in mind that we should know before we pass the minimum wage or even after that, because I believe we've done what we can do right now, but I will think about it. I will pass now.
I guess I would say going to school to be a teacher, this is the kind of stuff that you don't learn about. So I had no idea what kind of things impact teaching as much as they do. Sometimes I've got friends that are teachers that say, well, I don't pay attention to any politics stuff at all. And an older teacher told me, if you don't like politics, or you don't at least pay attention to it, and you're going to be a teacher, you better start, because it's the things that are going to directly affect you, the laws that are passed and that kind of thing. So at the bare minimum, at least pay attention to it, and you kind of know what's going on. So those are the two things that when you're going to school to be a teacher, or you're thinking about being a teacher, they don't tell you those types. And it would be tough to teach about those things, because they're just life experiences. You have to figure it out on your own, kind of. But
Okay. So just in general, to folks in the audience or that might hear this later on YouTube or a video, but what advice do you have for others who want to take action but just don't know where to start? I know Dale said earlier, just do it, the Nike motto. But if you don't know where to start, what would you say to somebody who wants to get active but doesn't know how, just doesn't know where that first step to take is?
I just pick up the issues that you passionate about it, and organize, and take actions, and I guess fight back. Just don't accept the attack, I guess, yeah. And if you believe on something, you can organize around it. And you can just like invite people to your game and they will help you.
I was going to, there is some good news out there in the fact that one of the successful ingredients in the Trump campaign and the Republican campaign is that they took complicated issues like economics and healthcare and made them sound simple. And a lot of our people fell for it. The good news is you're seeing an increase in newspaper readership, and people that are watching, real TV, not just the news, cable TV stuff, but we are, you've got Google now, and you have to learn how to get your news not just from Facebook, but you have the ability to go out and really find out the heart of a story, and so that's an education process that we need to do ourselves, because when you're having those conversations with your friends at the cocktail party, and they throw some dumb slogan out there, make America great again, or something like that, you need to be able to come back with a real factual, evidence-based retort, unlike what the Republicans give us. I mean, right now they're running away from Trump on Russia as far as they can, because people are talking about constitutional law now, and guys like Rod Bloom can't do that. And so that's one of the good things that are happening out there. We're learning, we're getting smarter, because we have to.
And I want to piggyback on what Dale has said, and I don't even know if I'm answering the question, but
Yeah.
all right, I'll talk. Part of not only was my, anger toward women that drove me, but also exactly what Dale said, as a lawyer, we're trained in constitutional law. We understand the branches of government and what they can and cannot do, and where in the Constitution that gives them the power to do what they can and cannot do. And so listening to the debates, I just scream at the TV set, like, you can't do that. You're the president can't do that, and so, or, why are we blaming the president for everything when it's Congress that's the one who passes laws? So, part of, what I would love to do is to do civic education for our communities. We need to become educated on how the government works or should function. Otherwise, they're going to have like little sound bites that, oh yeah, we're just, we can single-handedly pass laws as the president. So, that is something I would love to see more of or be more engaged in. And it is, find your passion, find what you're interested in, and just either find an organization or a nonprofit that does it, or find your friends who want to do it, and just throw yourself into it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? So, maybe you actually change the world for something positive. So.
I'd say just find something that affects you, and then find a group of people that feel the same way you do, and that's a good place to start.
So we've talked a lot about activism, and all four of you, things that you have done through activism. Laws don't necessarily get passed or get changed from a march, from the different things necessarily that have happened, but they do show public support for things. But I guess just a broader question for all of you, because I think that this is partially why everyone is here. So how do we collectively turn actions such as these that you've all done into electoral opportunities?
Well, when Republicans control the three branches of government, democracy only has a couple other pillars to rely on. That's the press, that's the courts. and also what you're seeing in some of these cities right now, that is happening on a local level. To use some examples, Johnson County climate change, Des Moines climate change, Johnson County climate change, wages, sanctuary cities. You know, not only are cities the economic drivers for our country, but they're sort of like the guardrails for our democracy. And I'm going to use this bad analogy. If you've got a car going down the road and the driver is drunk, or he's having a medical emergency, the guardrails keep the car on the road. That's what's going on right now in our country. We've got somebody who's driving the bus, and it's going all over the road. And so you're seeing states, county supervisors, you know, they're all stepping up, and they're taking these levels and they're making them on a local level because of the inactivity or inability of Congress to get anything done. And they're affecting change locally, and they're giving people the opportunity to lead their voice to the discussion and to make a difference on a local level. So that's one of the things, that's one of the good things that's saving us right now. And I would encourage those of you in your audience that elected office is tough. You get beat up pretty good. There are times, but I think this is going to be our time, and it's going to be good, and it's going to be healthy and therapeutic for us to be at the table making the decisions. There will be a Democratic president again, and there will be a Democratic Congress again. And so you're building the foundation for that change right now.
Yeah, just to add to what Dale said, yeah, I agree with everything you said. But, you know, also for the community, for the voter, this is a learning experience. Like, action like this will make people think, like, wisely next time when they vote. And it become like learning experience that we're supposed to elect the right person for this position, you know? So because they're going to be acting on behalf of us. And all this, I guess, this time, even though like really it's bad time after the election, but I think the only thing good that maybe the president did is make us unite more than ever, which is great, which people are gonna like think if they used to go and vote just like that because they wanna vote and they don't know anything about that person, I guess they will like be careful next time and think like more than one time to vote for who to vote to.
I think one thing that I've noticed with talking to people, presenting them with facts and being unbiased about the facts and just giving them just the facts. A lot of people will finds out stuff that they did not know, and that will kind of they can decide and act on their own. And a lot of people have an idea in their head that they sometimes have heard off Facebook or something, and I've talked to a lot of my members that giving them facts, being unbiased, and presenting both sides, and they respect that, and that gives them a trust in you as well. So that kind of.
So one thing that definitely I think a lot of people have noticed about what's happened since the election, since the legislative session kicked in, since we had probably the worst legislative session for women, for workers, for you name it. So many of these actions have inspired people to run for office. So I know the answer for one of you on this panel, but have you or have people that you know have they been inspired, or have you encouraged them to run for office? Oh, come on, Mazza here.
Yeah, I just want to give you a chance. Anyway, for me, it really was a time to do so, because I believe if we cannot change something on the federal level, we can start from bottom to the top. And that's why I decided to run for city council in Iowa City. and hopefully we can make a change, like starting from the city level and going toward the federal level. Yeah.
It's tough to get a bunch of teachers that like to teach to talk about walking away from teaching. So the main one that we've had is somebody that's getting close to retirement that's talking about running for school board after retirement. So.
Excellent. So, Dale, let me just ask you, having been a former local office holder, you know, what would you say, and you touched a little bit on this earlier, you know, what would you say to encourage people that, you know, it's a frightening thing to say, God, I'm going to put my name out there, I'm going to put my name on a ballot, and I could face, you know, public rejection. What would you do to encourage people to run for local office?
This election really quantified the differences, I think, between us and folks who aren't here today, in the fact that there is no better place to be able to quickly and efficiently and effectively impact change than local office. I mean, you can actually do stuff, you know, if you've got an issue with policing, you can tell the police chief, these are where I want my cops. This is how I want them to police. You know, issues that we've talked about for, you know, people like Rob Hogue, who, you know, years ago he started talking about climate change and people thought he was crazy, and Dave Osterberg, who started talking about water quality, you know, 40 years ago, and I don't want to date how old he is, but, you know, on a local level, you can actually do those kind of things. But at the same time, this is really a serious time. And those of you who are older probably understand the gravity of when I say that. It's unlike anything that I've lived through. And it really, what Trump and the Republican Party did, they sold out their base. Rob Bloom's going to cut veterans' benefits. That health care bill is going to impact seniors and elderly. And for those folks to do that, that is incredibly unethical and immoral in my eyes. And so it really is time for a new type of leadership. I mean, there's things that Trump has done that might make more sense for this type of day and for maybe us as Democrats. But the difference is there is a moral and ethical reason for why we are doing things other than simply to enrich our family and our friends. And that's why we need new faces. I mean, you talk about our party, people want young folks, and they want young folks with energy and passion. And that's not to say that as older folks we don't have that. But what we haven't done well, we haven't done a good job of transitioning a new generation. And we need to spend more attention and pay attention to that.
Yes, supposedly we didn't have a bench, and there's apparently 8 people running for governor now, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of excitement out there. So, you know, I guess the last thing that I just want to throw out here for a question that we had thought up that we wanted to ask you is just basically what is next for you or for your group? What steps can those here in the audience do to help you or your cause or a cause that they really care about? So what is next for you? What's next for your group?
For the center, we have a lot to do next, you know, because we are not only working for the minimum wage, we a lot of like things just like the affordable housing, wage theft campaign, and also like defending immigration, civil rights, and also like improving the practice between the relationship between the police and the community. And affordable housing is a big deal with us right now. But for the minimum wage, we're still reaching out to businesses. We start creating committees from the allies and members. So we gonna start like focusing on like reaching out also to hotels and other businesses who we did not reach to them so far. Is the second question?
Well, just so what's next for you, but not only that, how can somebody in the audience who's really interested in CWJ, for example's work, how can they get involved?
There is two ways. I guess, if you don't live like in Johnson County and you cannot come and really help us in doing this, there is many ways you can do things. Because the minimum wage is not affecting Johnson County only, it affects everywhere. You can still create a group in your area and start organize around this kind of issues, like protecting the immigrants and also defend the wages. And also beside that, you can donate, yeah. Outside we have our executive directors is outside. Please go and visit our booths and donate to us if you really moved by what we did and what we continue doing it. Please, donate to us and it would be great.
I find this question kind of timely because I feel like I'm in the middle of a midlife crisis myself. And trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What is important to me? What are my values? And, my current position isn't necessarily what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And I had always been, involved in nonprofit work and been involved in, working with underserved populations. And then I joke, I sold myself to the devil, which is, corporate America. And so, I'm looking for something new. I'm looking for something where I can make a difference because that's, that's me. And so if anybody has a job, no, I joke, but not really, but, but, I am looking, to do something for my community because that's where my heart is, that's where my passion is. And, this election really refocused my, what my values are. I did mention, part of what I did for the Women's March is set up a 501c4 to funnel the funds into, so we could, take donations. And so part of that was, it was called the Iowans for the Promotion of Civic Education. Part of that was like, when that does get, at the end of this March, I establish, something where I would go and teach or promote, civic education to our community. So that is something I'm looking at grants to start that, so we can educate the adult population on constitutional literacy, which we are so lacking in this country. So,
Especially from our president, right?
particularly from our president.
So,
yes, horrible.
Shane, so what's next for West Lyon Education Association, and what could folks do to help you out if they felt like they could?
Well, especially in West Lyon and in Iowa, we're going to keep on working towards making our association keep the community activity going and keeping to improve our public schools. So our public school, you can't get that kind of education anywhere but that public school. So keep improving that and just do a better job every day.
Well, it's, I heard that, trying to figure out what I'm going to do someday. I've been dealing with that for, hard to believe, but I actually turned 60 this summer. And I've been real lucky in my life. I don't have any money, but I've had a wealth of experiences, and I've made a lot of unique friends along the way. And in all honesty, I'm pissed. Excuse me, but this is, I'm at a point in my life where I'm not going to roll over anymore, and I'm not going to just avoid the discussion because I don't want to engage it. What has happened to us and to our democracy and the people that I love is obscene, and we have an obligation to stand up for those people who need our help, because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And so I'll still be around. If you need anything, let me know. I'm not going anywhere. I love Iowa. Iowa's been very, very good to me. I've got a great boss and a lovely wife that puts up with me, and an 18-year-old kid who smiles when I walk in the door. And so it's time to make some change, and I look forward to being a part of that.
Excellent. So right before, I guess we'll go to audience questions here next. But with that said, is there any last words that, closing comments or anything that you'd like to make? All right. So with that, questions from the audience for anyone here on the panel? We got one up there. Scott will bring you a microphone.
Sometimes I think it's hard to know what the other side's saying. I first realized this in the 1970s when I had working a split at the phone company and had a couple hours in the middle and KXDL on. It was news morning and afternoon. It's Rush Limbaugh. And he's telling me things about liberals and Hillary. I had no idea that's what they were saying. Before the general election, I got invited to a Facebook group invited by a liberal attorney in Florida because he needed more liberals on this group that was Clinton versus Trump. And, hey, I'm a Bernie person. I mean, hey, it's like I understand the problems, and I think we need to fix the problems with the Democratic Party at the top. But, just last week, somebody posted, what do you think about this? A friend sent this to me. It's a list of 41 things that they said, why weren't the liberals complaining about Obama about these? And I found it on the internet. I think it started a month or so ago. And they said, make it viral. And it is. I don't think that the liberals even know these things are what they're saying. I debunked the first 11. And I'm saying, hey, when I have time, I'll debunk. I'll check the others. Every one of them was either blatantly false or distorting the truth. And they have reinvented history to the point where people believe things that aren't true. And so I think people have to be more aware. Is there a way we can network to address those things? And it isn't just like public campaigns at the last minute before election.
If I could jump in. I want you to think about a couple things. I want you to think about sort of the effective use of time. Keep in mind how we lost the election. Democrats didn't vote, or we didn't get the independents. The Trump base is never going to change. I don't waste any energy on those guys. They are not only, they're believing that false narrative. It's like they're gone, Their brain has been sucked out and it's not going back. But keep in mind all the people that that are moderates, that are Democrats, that sort of went along with that. And so it's sort of like war. You concentrate your guns and your weapons where it's going to make a difference instead of trying to spread it out. And so, I would recommend that because it's real easy when I talk about being pissed to wake up in the morning and you see a Facebook post and next thing you know, 20 minutes later, and you've went to, what's the Google, the urban myth, that page and you debunk it, but you've already lost about 20 minutes. And so just think about that a little bit.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on fake news or, I guess, I think about how many union members voted for Trump, and how that very much disturbs.
What's really scary, though, is that, Sinclair Broadcasting is buying up many of these media outlets in Iowa. And and during the last Obama election, you know, they did some real subtle things with, you know, they played a, you know, Obama was the angry presidential candidate, but the other candidate was a nice, peaceful, you know, and so there's real, not so subtle things nowadays that they will probably do because they are to the right of Fox News. And so we need to be vigilant when it comes to that.
I think we have a question, at least one or two questions up here.
Having been the participant in many presidential campaigns and caucuses, I'm concerned both in not concentrating on the past to get over it, this last election, presidential election, and to concentrate on the future of electing a Democrat. We always want to elect the best person we can, but I gotta tell you, a bad Democrat is worth more than most Republicans. And so, you know, looking at the facts of the situation, how are you going to get people to recognize that and to vote in their own self-interest rather than listening to the pablum that's served out by the Republican Party and only accepting things that reinforce their beliefs and denying scientific facts or experiential facts?
I don't know how to answer that question, except that that is something that we have struggled with, and it didn't start in 2016, as far as people voting against their own self-interest. And it's something that we definitely have to work on. I mean, I mentioned that there was way too high of union members that voted for President Trump. I can't. We can go down the line here and talk about different constituencies. I don't know why a single woman in this entire country would vote for the man, but that happened. So how do we address that?
Well, and I do want to say, and this is just completely anecdotal, things I've seen, or just my own personal experiences, I do think there needs to be some kind of healing within the Democratic Party. I do think, you know, there was a lot of, as a Bernie supporter, you know, I got over it, right? But I still think that there's still, I've seen it, I've seen discussions, still that rift that Bernie was screwed over, you know? And so I think that needs to be addressed. I think we need to talk about that. And then what are our values as a Democrat, you know? Are we farther left than we, you know, or do we need to get further left or not? And I think there are people that were burned, or feel that they were burned, literally and figuratively by Bernie, from that. And so there's still that discussion going on. I've seen it myself, like, you know, Bernie versus Hillary. And so that, to me, that wound somehow needs to be addressed and healed before we can move on to defeating the Republicans. So that's just my own. I think it's the elephant in the room. It seems like, to me, that needs to happen.
Well, and that, there's a frustration on my part. Yeah, I mean, there's a frustration because it is paramount that we get past that point sooner rather than later. And the whole discussion about message is a complicated discussion. And it's going to take time as Democrats for us to really figure that out. But when we talk about jobs, you know, we shouldn't just talk about jobs, but there actually is a value in having a job. And we missed that. We didn't talk about that. But that discussion needs to be happening right now because that one of the reasons why we lost, we were split down the middle, and there was some bad blood there. But when I come from this perspective, the intent, and I really don't think there was an intent for it to happen that way. It happened, but we need to get past that. And whether we set a timeline on it, it's like, hey guys, the bus is moving. If you want to get on the bus, now's the time, because we don't have time to really, you know, we need to mend some fences, but we need to move because these guys are meticulous about how they are planning the disassembly of our democracy, and they are doing it while we're meeting right now. And so I'm ready, you know. Good answer, Megan.
I just want to thank the panel for sharing with us. My comment is to what Megan said about there needs to be some kind of inherent healing that takes place within our party, within every party for that matter, because grassroots organization is awesome. This deal here today is awesome, but it almost seems like no matter what, greed ends up taking center stage, whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent, and things seem to fall apart over time. And it's almost like a flaw in human nature that this happens. And I just think that there needs to be a major healing. I mean, I'm not just talking, you know, let's shake hands and just agree that we disagree. I mean, there needs to be some kind of real significant change happen in order for grassroots organization to even take hold.
Well, I mean, you know, I've been in the middle of some union fights. You want to talk about ugly stuff. Those have been ugly. But by the end of the day, there's a keg of beer, and we're all drinking beer, and we're going on to the next fight. And your point is, it's well took, but I struggle for it. So what do we need? Well, I mean, and I don't know. What's it going to take to get to the next stage? I don't know.
Beer always helps,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, beer will. Keats?
I prefer wine.
Okay.
There's a couple things I wanted to say as a comment. I think this has been very helpful for me. I'd like to thank all of the panel members because each of you, some of you I didn't know the things that you had done, but each of you has done just phenomenal stuff. I'm not going to be a politician. I'm always going to be a vocal person about what I want and feel, but I'm getting burned out. And in Iowa, I'll be so specific because King represents me, and now we have Trump as president, and I am losing my mind. But things are going, and you've mentioned it, they're going backwards. And I just wanted to know if there was anything any of you had to say about, especially for someone who is as young and spring chicken-like as myself, and I can see things going backwards. What can stop me other than seeing and meeting people like you, getting up to come and meet people like you? Because I don't have children. I'm retired ISEA. The women's demonstration, I had my friends calling me and saying, hey, are you going? And I saw them there. And I can't say enough good stuff about you, including people of color and multiple cultures with women. Because, you know, again, Democrats and women, really, they have a lot of things that they could be discussing, you know. But anyway, back to, what can you say to me as a supporter of everything that you're doing so that I don't get burnt out? I have no choice but to vote Democrat, but you know, I've always been active, and it's killing me. Just get the weapon and shoot me yourself. Take me out of my suffering.
I'm just gonna, you know, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and during the '60s, and I came to Iowa, and I stay in Iowa because Iowa and the people of Iowa, deep down inside, it's my belief that they're special. And if you look at what has happened in this state, I mean, we did elect, or in caucus, a black guy with a Muslim name to go on to be president. We passed historic civil rights legislation for gays and lesbians. Bob Ray. I mean, when you talk about immigration, we pioneered that concept. I think a lot of people realize they got hoodwinked this last time around. But what they didn't have, we didn't make the case to them. And we'll take the hit. We didn't make the case to them. But, you know, change and the struggle takes time. And while you may be burned out, you do bring some incredible sense of institutional history to the table that younger people need to hear. And so don't go away, because we need you. A body is a body. You can phone call Chuck Grassley's office. You can do all kinds of things. But when you look at Megan, you know, she had 27,000 women not too long ago. And those, I would suspect, and that probably 80% of those women have never been engaged in a march or an event similar to before. And they're going to be back. And hopefully the next time there's double that amount. And so change is happening out there. We either need to capture it or it's going to run us over.
And I definitely believe in self-care. I mean, you know, I joke with my friends, like, okay, I'll do this march and you do the next march, you know, or just participate, like, however you can, you know, because we're going to, you know, we've heard it before, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, we got to take care of ourselves as... Right, well, yeah, no, I agree. You know, it's not that long ago, you know, speaking with my mother, it's like not that long ago, you know, her boss was like making derogatory comments to her, you know, at her job, you know, back at the deli. You know, it's just like things are going back. You know, seems to be going backwards. I think a lot of young women don't realize, I don't know why, they just don't realize what it was like not that long ago, right? It wasn't that long ago. I mean, women, for goodness sakes, I mean, we weren't able to vote until this last, you know, century. So it's just, I think there's, again, education. Like, they don't, you know, we take it for granted. You know, a lot of women take our position for granted, but.
All right, I think Scott has someone up next.
Yes. Hi, Charlie. I'm up here. The sign says stand up, speak up, fight back, and that's what I'm doing. My name's Mike Carberry, and I'm a proud liberal, tree-hugging, water-worshiping, dirt-hugging, pipeline-fighting, minimum-waging liberal from the People's Republic of Johnson County. So I'm here to tell you a story about electing Democrats. It's not just about electing Democrats, it's about electing the right Democrats. Okay, Charlie was up, and a lot of us remember the trifecta that we had in '06. We had a Democratic trifecta up at the State House, but we couldn't get jack shit done. And why is that? Is because there was a group in the State House called the Six Pack. And they were rural Democrats that voted like they were Republicans. And another story is that when I got elected to the Johnson County Supervisors about 3 years ago, there was 5 Democrats on the Board of Supervisors. Yet they couldn't even bring up a minimum wage because they had basically had 3 chamber Democrats on the board. What we needed was progressive Democrats on the board. And when I got elected, we had 3 votes to pass the minimum wage, and that's what we did. So we were the first county to do that. So what I'm here to tell you, and I'd like some comments from the board, is about electing, you know, having litmus tests on your Democrats. Just because they have a D behind their name doesn't mean they're going to do what we want them to do.
You know, it's part of getting elected. If a Democrat is running out there, and if they're not sensing the progressive sentiments in the wind, they don't deserve to get elected. It's a movement that is happening. And Bernie's, I mean, these folks, who would have thought that we'd actually be talking about single-payer health insurance? Who would have thought we'd be talking about, I mean, there's states now that are doing free college, you know? And so that needle has been moved, and it certainly needs to move further, but that discussion is happening. We need to be the ones leading that discussion.
I think, yeah, there are, of the people that you talked about who opposed progressive legislation back then, I don't think there's a single one of them left in the State House. So I think it's important to support who supports you.
I'm going to stand up. So I just want to circle back on a couple of things. One, as far as building a bench, it doesn't have to start with local office. There are boards and commissions that you can get your feet wet in. You can learn how the system works. You can focus on one thing, become educated in that, and feel more comfortable within that system. So I would highly encourage people to participate on a really hyper-local level that way. The second thing, as far as moving on and kind of bridging the divide and all of those things and voting in our self-interest, I've come a long way with the Democratic Party. I was really pissed off. I was a Bernie staff and delegate. I saw things that I was unhappy with as far as treatment. But, there might be Democrats, and probably will be a Democrat that doesn't 100% align with my views. But if we push those people as hard as we're pushing Republicans who give no shits about us, like, we can move the needle for them too, you know what I mean? So it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop when you get somebody with a D behind their name. You have to stay active and participate and know those issues and say, this is what I like what you're doing, but you got to move this way a little bit. And if we pressure Democrats the way we're pressuring Republicans right now, then I think we'll see some solid change.
Amen. Up there.
Hi, my name's Chris Larson. I'm from Ottumwa. And what I was wanting to talk about is addressing the inherent problems within the Democratic Party. We talk about building the party and putting everybody under a big tent. Well, there's a lot of people that don't want to stand under the big tent. It's full of double talk. And what I mean by that is when we rig a primary and it was proven, and there was, right now there's a class action lawsuit against the DNC by Bernie Sanders supporters. Their lawyers are not arguing that they didn't rig it. They're just telling the court that they don't have to give a fair and impartial primary. What's the point of even having one then? If these things are going to be predetermined in back rooms at the DNC, why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we talking about the way we party fundraise? Why, when we have events, are there exclusive clubs that people get better seating, more access to elected officials, and the less you can contribute, you sit in the back of the room? These are questions we got to ask ourselves. I was a Bernie national delegate, and I went Bernie or bust. I don't apologize for it. I'm back in the Dems now, and I'm trying to help out. But Democrats have got to ask themselves some key questions, about fundraising and getting money out of politics. And until we can do that, we're not a party of the people. And we want to talk about labor. Democrats have done a great job protecting public sector labor. But for the most part, they've turned their back on manufacturing labor. And we can see that with some trade deals that we've been trying to push through, have been pushed through. I'm just asking Democrats to take an honest look in the mirror and see really what they're pushing out. And that's why we lost the middle of this last election, Both Obama and Trump went on a populist message. Let's think about it. Thank you.
I think Midge has a question.
Midge Slater, retired, union and proud. The comment was raised, I don't know what happened to our young women. Well, let me tell you what happened. I was there in the 60s. I was there in the 70s. I was there in the 80s, and I was there in the 90s, a little bit different. I moved to Iowa in 1971 because I could do my own divorce for $29. That's how progressive Iowa was. But in the 60s, the women's movement spent so damn much time arguing about our lack of class consciousness. And I saw a horrible thing happen because I worked as a union worker in corporate America, and the women's movement became breaking the glass ceiling. And there were many times if I had a choice between this woman as my boss or this man as my boss, I would have taken the man every time. So we've lost track of who we are, what we're about. I don't want to just vote for a woman because it's a woman. Because there are too many women out there who are awesome, and I know some of them are here today because they're legislators who care, and they're here because they want to learn from us who are not legislators. Somehow they made it, and there are more out there too. But I also want to say on that issue of class consciousness, I just read a book called Hillbilly Elegy, and it was painful because it was written by a Republican. And he almost lost me at the point where he said that payday lending really served a purpose for the people he grew up with in Kentucky. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, God, you know, I'm not talking to these people. To me, payday lending is bad news. It's Shylock all over again, and what are we doing? But the more I read this book about the white working class in America, and Appalachia, which is where I went to college, is a place where we see them. And if you heard any miners who were interviewed during the last election, you know how messed up it is and how messed up our message to them was. They thought they were voting their own interests. They thought they were voting for jobs. And, you know, it's not just in Tennessee, Kentucky, wherever. It's also in Iowa. And I think that working class is a good term. It's a real term, and we all have to face up to it. And I think what you all were talking about down there today really energized me because you might not have used that term, but you were talking about just exactly that.
Are there any more questions? Right up here.
In today's tense political environment, you often feel the sense of helplessness. You feel castigated, and a lot of times you just feel flat out screwed over. I mean, it's kind of a half a step forward, 5 miles back kind of thing. And a lot of times you just feel outraged, and that outrage is not age specific. I mean, plenty of my friends have expressed interest to get politically involved. I myself went door-to-door knocking for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I want to ask, what's your advice for the next generation of scrappy, die-hard liberals like myself? Where do you get started, and how do you get started off right?
It sounds like you already got started off right.
Yeah.
I was knocking doors for Dave Nagel when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. So just starting, you're already there. So keep doing it. And if you start to feel burned out, it's okay. And you can take a break. But keep doing it. Keep doing it your whole life. Politics, oftentimes when we have political trainings at different things, I always throw out the question, so what in your life doesn't involve politics? And no one has yet to be able to come up with anything that politics doesn't involve. So keep involved and keep involved your entire life, and thank you for being engaged at such a young age.
And
So I think we got time.
and I'll just quick comment. My family, oh, Megan, she's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and she's so idealistic. And I hear, oh, Bernie, there's no way Bernie getting elected, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, don't lose the ideal. Why not? Keep asking why not. Why can't we have free, education? Why can't we have, single parent, why can't we do these things, and we keep asking that question. We shouldn't just stop because people tell us, we're not being realistic, and screw that, just do what's right, just keep doing the right thing. So, okay, question.
All right, I think we got time for one last question.
Hi. So I appreciate seeing the racial diversity here, the racial diversity on the panel, gender diversity. What can we do to make sure we're including people of color, the LGBT community, other communities? So when I hear talk about the white working class, for the last, I read an article in the Post, the Washington Post, the white unemployment rate peaked at about 9% during the recession. The black unemployment rate in Iowa is 14.6%, highest in the nation. Right? And so when we say things like, let's talk about the working class, how do we make sure we're including not just the white working class, but the black working class, the LGBT working class? How do we make sure we're being inclusive in Iowa and across the country?
I would say I worked on African American outreach on Hillary's campaign, and quite frankly, I hit my head up against the wall quite often. And it's not just that campaign, but others. I think the paradigm needs to change as far as our discussions go in these communities. We go into some of these communities and we're talking about rural issues or agricultural issues or issues that might not really necessarily have relevance. The example that was used about coal mining, Trump went into those communities and talked about that, even though it was nothing but magic. We didn't go into places like Waterloo and talk about gun violence. I get shots fired in my neighborhood. I need somebody on a national level that's willing to engage in that discussion. And so I think those discussions that are important to people on a day-to-day basis, as Democrats, we should own that discussion. And what we do, we play defense. I mean, it really is time for us to take the offense and to start. I was saying, I'd love to get us in these neighborhoods talking about real neighborhood issues. And when we do that, we'll engage those communities that feel like they have not been a part of the discussion. That's one of the reasons why we lost, because African Americans did not come out and vote in Iowa. They stayed home. We did not have a message we did not connect to them. Other campaigns did on different levels, but when there is no connectivity, there's no reason to get up and go vote. And so, good question to ask.
So I believe that is probably all the time that we have for questions here because we're running up on lunch. I want to say Maza here had to leave early to get back to Iowa City to raise funds for her campaign for city council. If you're looking for a good local candidate to support, she might be a good one. So with that being said, I want to say thank you to all 4 of our heroes who have stood up, fought back,